After much persuasion, Titi agreed, thinking it would be a fun adventure. When they arrived at the bakery, Titi froze, all life draining from her body. The face of the woman on the bakery shop, though heavy with makeup, was very similar to that of her late cousin Besem. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, and as much as it sounds crazy, the baker that everyone talked about and scrambled for her pastries was none other than her dead cousin. How it all began. In a small bustling town in Central Africa, there lived a beautiful young girl named Besem who lived in a small crumbling apartment. The space was tight, but it sheltered her family, her aged parents, 2 siblings, and her maternal aunt, Susan, who had a daughter of Besem's age. Despite their present situation, to make ends meet, Besem's heart burned with a relentless desire to lift her family from poverty as the firstborn of her parents. Every single second at school, Besem spent it on studying. She aimed at graduating as a top student in the university with the little resources she had. Unlike her cousin, Titi, who was lazy and aimless but dreamt of living a luxurious life with her rich boyfriends, Besem juggled her school life and a job as a baker at a small bakery, all to help sustain her family. She was a good baker, and she baked with passion and skill, creating delicacies that brought a little light to their dim existence. Her hands, though often tired, never faltered, and her determination to succeed shone as brightly as her ambition. She knew that with hard work, she could one day lead her family to a better life away from the shadow of poverty. But not everyone shared Besem's vision. Her aunt, Susan, watched her with eyes full of jealousy. The bitterness she felt towards her niece was born out of shame, as her own daughter could not do the same or copy a good example. Besem would return home late after her day's job at the bakery and hand over the little she had made to her mother to help with the running of the house, while her own daughter, Titi, often returned in the late hours of the morning, very drunk after partying all night. Susan hated the fact that Besem, who was her sister's child, was the one carrying the hopes of the family. In her mind, it was unfair that her daughter should remain lost while Besem shined brighter and brighter every day. Consumed by envy, Susan plotted. She couldn't bear the idea that Besem might be the one to elevate their family out of poverty. She thought in her mind that she would rather they all stayed in their struggles than allow her niece to succeed and become the star of the family rather than her own child. In the darkest corners of her heart, a cruel plan formed. Susan decided that she would make Besem lame. A disabled Besem, she believed, could never rise, could never bake, and could never lead the family to prosperity. But fate, as it is often does, had other plans. One evening, as Besem returned home late from a long shift at the bakery, Susan saw her chance. She approached her niece with a fake smile and offered her some water, laced with a deadly potion. The intention was to cause paralysis, but instead, the poison took Besem's life. The town mourned the next morning. The once cheerful and hardworking Besem, who was admired by everyone, was now gone, but none suspected the truth of her death. Susan, on her side, feigned sorrow, and though her heart secretly rejoiced, she was careful to play the role of the grieving aunt. Besem's dreams, it seemed, had died with her, so everyone thought. Meanwhile, surprisingly, wandering the streets of the unfamiliar town, Besem stumbled upon an old man who owned a small struggling bakery. The old man's hands were no longer steady, and his business was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing the bakery, Besem felt a spark of hope ignite within her once more. She approached the old man and offered to transform his business with her baking skills if he would let her. Unknown to her, the old man was not just an ordinary human. He was a man blessed with the gift of seeing things beyond the normal eyes, and so he recognized who she was at first glance. Besem was shocked and scared, but the old man assured her that her secret was safe with him. He told her that she hadn't gone to the afterlife because her soul was restless with her unfulfilled dreams of making a better life for her family. Her spirit was too strong to allow her life go to waste. Seeing the pure heart Besem had, the old man agreed to rent his bakery to her, while she paid afterwards when she started making some revenue. Meanwhile, Besem spent some time studying the town. To conceal her identity, Besem covered her face with layers of makeup, painting herself into someone unrecognizable. Her new face allowed her to move freely without fear of being discovered or seen by anyone. No one would know that she was the same Besem, the girl who had died, now returned to fulfill her dreams from beyond the grave. And so, with renewed purpose, Besem began baking again. She poured her heart into every loaf of bread, every biscuit, every cake, and every gâteau. Her talent quickly drew attention, and soon the bakery was booming each day. Hospitals, hotels, and schools placed orders. Unable to get enough of the delicious baked goods made by Besem. Besem's fame spread far and wide, though she remained elusive. She hired people to deliver her goods and avoided public appearances as much as possible. She also made sure that her makeup was ugly enough to prevent men from throwing advances at her. Meanwhile, with the bakery's success, Besem began sending money to her family. Mr. and Mrs. Obi received the money in their bank account as aid from an NGO organization which Besem had applied since she was still alive. Though the money came at the time when they faced difficulties the most following Besem's death, the entire family couldn't stop crying for Besem and how she still took care of them even after death. Unbeknown to them, Besem was still taking care of them after her death, but in a very different way that no one could believe. Susan, on her side, felt very bitter, knowing Besem's roots were still standing even though the tree itself had been cut off. Meanwhile, Titi, who had run away from home to live with a wealthy boyfriend of hers, heard whispers of an incredible baker whose goods had become the topic on the lips of the students in the new university. Curious to know if indeed the pastries tasted as heavenly as the other students professed it to be, she bought some of the famous bread one day from the school's canteen, not knowing it had been baked by her cousin Besem. As she took her first bite, something stirred within her. The taste was hauntingly familiar, but she brushed the thought away, laughing at her insane imagination. Her friends, however, were intrigued and urged her to visit the mysterious baker who was often said hardly went out of her bakery. After much persuasion, Titi agreed, thinking it would be a fun adventure. When they arrived at the bakery, Titi froze. The face of the woman on the bakery, though heavy with makeup, was very similar to that of her late cousin Besem. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, and as much as it sounds crazy, the baker that everyone talked of and scrambled for her pastries was none other than her dead cousin Besem. The thought left her shivering. Pretending to be interested in the pastries, Titi walked inside the bakery with her friends, but while the others enjoyed their pastries, her eyes were busy roaming and searching to find the baker and confirm her suspicions. Titi and her friends were greatly disappointed when they were told that the baker couldn't see anyone because she was feeling unwell today. Titi was disappointed, but she was more determined to somehow get to the bottom of it. She couldn't meet Besem in person, but she knew how to confirm if truly she is indeed the famous baker. Walking out of the bakery, Titi got an idea. She took a photo of Besem as proof, and that same day traveled back to her family. She thought of revealing the news to the entire family, but later kicked against it. If her suspicions ended up being wrong, it would hurt everyone and make them think she's crazy. With the sense of urgency and thinking of the only person who would believe her, Titi entered the house, avoiding her family and mother's scolding, and pulled her mother Susan to a secluded area where she was sure no one would hear them, and showed the Besem's picture on her phone. "That's Besem," Titi whispered, her voice trembling with belief. "She's still here. She's begging, even after death." Susan's heart bubbled with anger and dread. Even in death, Besem would not rest. She was still trying to save the family, still trying to be the beacon of hope, still outshining Titi. Susan's hands shook as she clenched the phone. How could this be? How could her niece defy her even from beyond the grave? But Susan was not one to give up easily. If Besem had managed to return, she would find a way to send her for good this time. Her jealousy had driven her once before, and it would drive her again. She began plotting her next move, determined to erase Besem's ghostly presence. Back at the bakery, Besem could feel a change in the air. Her instincts told her that something was coming, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She had worked so hard to stay hidden, to continue her mission in secret, but now it seemed that her cover was slipping. One evening, as she closed up the bakery, she felt a chill that was not from the cold night air. She glanced around, her eyes scanning the shadows, but she saw nothing. Yet deep in her heart, she knew something terrible was about to happen. Her time was slowly running out. The next morning, Titi returned to the bakery, this time without her friends. She had come alone, driven by a mixture of fear and fascination. She needed to see Besem again to confirm what she had already guessed. As she stood at the entrance, watching Besem walk from a closer range, her heart pounded. Titi gasped. Beneath the makeup, she saw the truth. Indeed, the woman who was too engrossed in her begging was really her dead cousin. She turned and ran, the weight of her confirmation pressing down on her. Titi fled the bakery, her heart racing as she tried to process what she had just seen. Her cousin, Besem, whom everyone believed to be dead, was alive, or at least her spirit was. And she was begging again, doing the very thing that she had died for. The realization made Titi feel both amazed and terrified. When she got back home, her thoughts were in disarray. Susan was waiting for her, sitting at the kitchen table, her face hard with determination. She had been thinking all night about what to do when she saw Titi enter. She motioned for her to sit down so they could talk. "What did you see?" Susan asked, her voice cold. Titi hesitated, still not entirely sure if she could trust her own senses. I saw her," she whispered. "It's Besem, it's really her. She's still here, begging. Everyone loves her pastries. I can't believe it." Besem slammed her fist on the table, her eyes blazing with fury. "Even in death, she wants to outshine my daughter. She will not rest until she's ruined everything for us. I know it." Titi's heart snapped. "But Besem is just trying to help. She's sending money to the family. We are all benefiting from what she's doing, even now." Susan shook her head at Titi's statement. Her face was twisted with resentment. "You don't understand, Titi. If she's allowed to continue, she will make sure we live under her shadow forever. I will not allow that." Her voice was trembling with anger. She had her chance in life and I took it away from her. Now I'll do whatever it takes to send her back to where she belongs. A shiver ran down Titi's spine as she listened to her mother's words. Susan was serious. She had already killed Besem once and now she intended to destroy her for good. "What are you going to do, Mama?" Titi asked, her voice small and unsure. Susan stood up, pacing inside the small kitchen, her mind racing. "There are ways to deal with ghosts, Titi, ancient ways. I will find someone who can banish her from this world once and for all, but no one must find out about this. Keep Besem's existence just between us." Getting the confirmation she needed, Susan sneaked from the house and visited a native doctor, the same one whom she had taken the deadly potion that killed Besem. She presented her case, begging for the native doctor to get rid of Besem once and for all. The native doctor told her that the only way to ensure Besem remained in the afterlife was to ensure that the family would remain wealthy, because that was the only thing holding Besem back. Once her family gets enough money, she would eventually disappear on her own. But Susan did not have the patience to wait till then. She feared that just as her daughter had discovered Besem, it was only a matter of time before another person does, and eventually her secret will get exposed to everyone. It was a risky move to wait. Too risky, and she can't bear such a risk. She then pleaded to the native doctor, willing to do everything to facilitate and increase the wealth of her family. The native doctor agreed and began performing some rituals. When he was done, Susan felt a sharp pain in her stomach. "It is done. Your family will forever remain rich," the man said to her. When Susan asked why she felt the pain in her stomach, she received the greatest shock of her life. Out of desperation, she had given not just her womb, but that of her only daughter, Titi. As she returned home, she tried to console herself and finally agreed that it was only for a greater good. Meanwhile, Besem continued to work at the bakery, unaware of the danger looming over her. Each day, more and more people came to buy for baked goods, praising her skills and begging for more. She found comfort in knowing that though she could not return to her family in person, she was still able to help them from afar. Her days were still not perfect because of the weird feelings she had within her, which had only grown stronger. In fact, it seemed as though life was being drained slowly from her with each passing minute. Seeking the help of the old baker man, she confided her fears in him. The old man then told Besem that her time on earth was almost over because someone else had guaranteed her family's riches. He told her to prepare, for at any moment she was bound to disappear. Besem accepted the news with mixed feelings. On one side, she was happy that her biggest wish had been fulfilled, but on the other side, she felt sad knowing she would be leaving her family for good this time around. It was something she knew would happen, but she didn't expect it to be this fast. She thought of going to see her family in hiding, but knew it was too risky because if she got caught, she would hurt them the more. One night, as she was closing up the bakery, she felt the same strange chill that she had sensed before. This time it was stronger, more menacing. Besem froze, her hands trembling. The moment was finally here. Suddenly, the door to the bakery swung open, and a shadowy figure stepped in. Besem's heart raced as she recognized the silhouette. It was her aunt, Susan. "What are you doing here?" Besem asked, her voice shaking. Susan stepped forward, her face lit with a wicked grin. "You really thought you could escape me, didn't you?" she sneered. "Even in death, you defy me, but not anymore. This ends tonight. I just came to make sure of it." Besem's ghostly form began to flicker with fear, but she stood her ground. "I'm not trying to defy you, aunt. I'm only trying to help my family." "Help?" Susan spat. "You think sending a few coins will erase the fact that you've always been the favored one? Always been the one with potential? You think I would ever allow you to succeed when my own daughter failed? You were meant to be nothing, just like the rest of us." Besem's eyes welled with ghostly tears as she listened to her aunt's cruel words. She had never understood why her aunt hated her so much, but now it all made sense. "You could have been a part of this, aunt. We could have all reasoned together instead of you ending my life." But Susan was beyond reasonable. Besem's form shimmered, growing weaker by the second. She could feel the power of whatever spell had been casted taking hold of her, dragging her back towards the shadows. Her time was running out. Desperate, Besem tried to plead one last time. "Please, Aunt Susan, don't do this. I am only trying to help the family. What will happen to them if you destroy me?" But Susan's eyes were wide. her face contorted with anger and hatred and happiness as she watched. "They will be just fine. Titi will take care of things. I won't let you take everything from her." Besem's heart ached. She had never wanted to take anything from Titi, but her aunt's jealousy had twisted everything. The room darkened as the spell intensified, the shadows pulling Besem away from her, fading into the night. "Goodbye, Besem," Susan hissed, her voice thick with satisfaction. And just as Besem was about to disappear completely, a sudden flash of light filled the room. The spell was interrupted, and Besem staggered backwards, confusion and fear flashing across her face. Besem reappeared, though her form was weaker, flickering like a dying flame. She looked at Susan with sorrow in her eyes. "You can't destroy me, Aunt. I may not be alive, but my love for my family is stronger than any spell you cast." Susan's face twisted in fury, but before she could say a word, a new figure entered the bakery. It was Titi. "Stop!" Titi screamed, rushing between her mother and Besem. "I won't let you do this, Mama." Susan froze, shocked by her daughter's defiance. "Titi, what are you doing? This is for you, for us." Titi shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, Mama. Besem has been helping us. She's been sending money, supporting us even after you killed her. She doesn't deserve this." Susan stared at her daughter, her hands trembling with rage. "You don't understand, Titi. She's always been the one standing in your way." But Titi stepped closer to Besem, her heart heavy with guilt and realization. "No, Mama, it's been you all along." For the first time, Susan felt that, her eyes filled with confusion, doubt creeping in her mind. But before she could say another word, Besem's ghostly form flickered once more. "I don't have much time," Besem whispered. "Titi, please take care of them, of our family." And with that, Besem faded into darkness, leaving only the scent of freshly baked bread lingering in the air. Susan stood in silence, her spell broken, her hatred unraveling. Titi wept quietly, knowing that her cousin had sacrificed everything, even in death, to keep their family alive. Just then, they heard some heavy footsteps. "We lost her." It was the voice of Mrs. Obi, Besem's mother, who had just entered with her husband. Susan froze, seeing her sister and her husband. She knew there was nothing to say to explain this, for they already know everything, but how? How did they find out about the bakery and Besem? Besem's family on their side couldn't help but weep as they stared at Susan. If only they had listened to Titi when she told them earlier what Susan was up to, then they wouldn't have missed this chance of seeing their daughter just this one last time. Besem was gone for good, but the memories of her sacrifice still lived in their hearts and minds. The Obi family, having disowned and sent Susan to prison, moved to the town where Besem stayed to continue her legacy. They had a lot of money that they didn't need to work, but working at Besem's bakery gave them the feeling that her presence could be felt there. And they were right, because even in the afterlife, Besem's spirit, though invincible, still remains in the bakery, watching over them all the time. The end. Please don't forget to subscribe for more amazing tales and comment on what you think or thoughts about this story. Also, please enable to like, share and subscribe. Till next time.